guys, and welcome back to another Coding with Python video. I'm Asher from Ashwin Tech Talks, and today we're going to talk about the numeric types in Python and also look at some examples in a Python launcher on how to convert one type to another. Now, setting that aside, let's get on with the video, guys. Now let's get started with one of the most primary numeric types in Python, the integer type. And the integer type is basically any whole number, positive or negative, without a decimal in Python. And depending on which version of Python you use, integers can have a maximum length or unlimited length. In the newest version of Python, Python 3, integers are unbounded, which means that they have unlimited length. Now, let's look at some examples. Here we have the variable x assigned to the data integer value 1. So that's an integer type. Price assigned to 345. And integers could also be negative, such as y equals negative 3,675. Now the next primary numeric type in Python is the float type, also known as the decimal type. And it basically represents numbers, positive or negative, containing a decimal. For example, x equals 1.5 or y equals negative 7.99. They are all known as floats. And floats can also be accompanied with scientific terms or numbers or variables such as e, which demonstrates to the power of 10 or to the power of some number, such as a equals 0.56 e10, 0.56 to the power of 10, b equals negative 34.56, e56 to the power of 56, anything like that. It can also be accompanied by scientific terms. Now moving on to the last numeric type in Python, known as a complex type. And if you took high school mathematics, you might be familiar with the complex type or imaginary numbers. And that's what basically the complex type is. It's imaginary numbers, or numbers accompanied with an imaginary part. And in Python, the imaginary part is represented by j. So, for example, we have x equals 1 plus 65j, or y equals 5j, z equals negative 45.5j. It just has to be a number accompanied with an imaginary part. And once you add that imaginary part, which is j, Python recognizes it and characterizes it as a complex type. And remember, I made a mistake in y and z. The j is supposed to be lowercase, not uppercase. Python won't recognize the uppercase because Python is very case sensitive. Now let's imagine you're creating a program and you define the variable x equal to 5. And in one part of the program, you want to use x as itself, 5, an integer. But towards the end of the program, you want to use x as a float, 5.0. Now, there's one way to do this. You can define the variable x equals 5, and towards the end of the program, you can redefine it, x equals 5.0. It's possible in Python. However, that's redundant and inefficient, and not really sophisticated. However, you can use another method. You can convert the integer x equals 5 to a float 5.0 using the float method, and that's known as type conversion. So in Python, you can convert one numeric type to another using the following methods known as integer method and the float method. Now you might notice that I haven't included a complex method. That's because you cannot convert a complex type to an integer or float, or vice versa. It's not possible in Python, and you will result in a Python error if you do so. Now let's get through some examples so we can get familiar with using the type conversion methods. Now, as you can see here, this is a Python module or scripting module, and the software I'm using is PyScripter. PyScripter is basically a free and open source Python integrated development environment, or Python IDE, which you can use in any coding. And there's many IDEs out there. This is just one I used. And PyScripter uses, well, the one I'm running on right now uses Python 2. That's not the newest version, but it's the one I'm comfortable with. And the newest version is Python 3. And you can try out Python 3 or Python 2 if you want, but I'm going to use Python 2 for this example. Now, in our first example, we're going to be converting integers to float. Now, let's define the variable first, x as an integer. Let's say 4. And let's declare another variable, y. And that's equal to float x. So we're going to convert the integer x into a float using the float method. So we're going to type in float. And in the brackets, we're going to put in x. And then, to see our result, we just print y. Let's see what we get. So we run the program. As you can see here, we get 4.0. So we were successful in converting the integer to a float. We can also change this to a negative number, such as negative 345. Doesn't matter. Run the program again. We get negative 345.0. Since it has a decimal, it's still a float. Therefore, we successfully converted an integer to a float using the float conversion method. Now let's move on to our next example. In this example, we're going to be converting float to integers. So the same situation here. Let's define the variable a equal to 5.6 and b is equal to int a. In this example, we use the int conversion method. Now, let's just print out our variable b. Rerun it. So we get the result 5. That's because we're not really rounding it. We're just converting it to an integer. And the closest integer of 5.6 is still 5. Python's not going to round it to 6. That's not how it works. There's a different method and function to do that. However, for this conversion method, we're not really rounding. We're just converting it to an integer. And 5.6 is converted to 5. It can also be 5.9. Let's just do 5.999. What are we going to get? Well, it's not 6. It's still 5. Because we're still going to keep this integer here, which is onto the left side of the decimal. We can also put this to a negative number as well. So negative 567.23. Always remember to keep the decimal though. Now, let's convert it. We get negative 567. That's because we're taking the integer. It doesn't matter. Remember, the integer method that is used to convert types is not rounding. That's an important aspect of the conversion methods. Now, in addition to numeric types, I also wanted to touch on a popular module in Python, known as the random module. And we use the random module to create or generate random numbers. For example, let's look at the following code. So here, we're going to generate a random number from 1 to 10. So let's see how we do this. First, since random is a module, we need to import the module in order to access a specific function of the module. So we first start with import random. And from random, we can assign or generate a random number. So we first start with print, our print statement, and we call the module random dot rand range. And rand range means a random number in a range. And we assign it. And the first integer we put is the starting integer of our range, in which case 1 to 10 is 1. And the second integer after the comma is our ending integer, where we want the range to end, because we don't want the range to go on forever. We need a random number from the range 1 to 10. So our second integer is 10. There we go. And we run the program. Here we have it, 3. When we first run the program, that's our result. Let's run it again, shall we? We get 8. Let's run it again. We get 3. Let's run it again. We get 9. What I'm trying to say is that this module or this program produces a random integer in the range 1 to 10. We can also change up our starting and ending integers. For example, let's look at the range -3 to, let's say, 20. So our starting integer is -3 and ending integer is 20. Let's run the program. Our result is 0. That's a number in the range of -3 to 20. Okay. Let's see if we get it again. Well, we got 18. Okay, run it again. 17. All are different numbers, and it's a random number in this range. So the random function can be used, or the random module can be used for many purposes other than this. This is just the basic function on the random.randrange method. Okay, we've reached the end of the video on Python numeric types. In the next video, we will discuss about strings and text types in Python. If you have any questions about the video or the coding we have done, feel free to talk about it in the comments below, and I'll reply to your question as soon as possible. Until then, it's bye from Ashwin. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my video. If you did, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. And also hit the bell icon to be notified on upcoming videos. Bye-bye.